big hello and good morning to everyone. You're all very welcome to today's webinar, which is all about the role of food and drink tourism and how this vitally important aspect of the visitor experience and visitor economy can assist with Northern Ireland's recovery response to COVID-19. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Gary Quaite and I'm the Food and Drink Experience Development Officer here at Tourism NI. And I'm delighted to be joined this morning, not only by so many of you who are out working at the coalface of the sector, but also by our panel of industry experts who are here to share some of their thoughts on the importance of food and drink. And they will be exploring and advising of what approaches their businesses, their members, and their partners have taken in response to COVID-19, and to share some insights on future trends, opportunities, and as we look ahead to the road of recovery. So I'd like to give a big welcome and a big thank you to our panelists. Again, it's great to have you all here. Today we are joined by Michelle Sherlow, who many of you will know as the Chief Executive of Food NI and Taste of Ulster. Following Michelle, we're going to have a Q&A. It's a pre-recorded Q&A session with Tony O'Neill, a Belfast chef and restaurateur. And Tony will hopefully join us a bit later this morning to take any questions that you might have for him after his Q&A session. I'm also pleased to welcome William Lavelle, who is Head of Drinks Ireland and the Irish Whisky Association. And last but certainly not least, we have Sharon Scott, who is the lead facilitator of the Taste Causeway Food and Drink Network. So hopefully you all get something out of today's session, and that you'd get some great takeaways. But as Michelle has suggested, there's Q&A session at the end if you want to direct any specific questions through to us. So really I'd like to start today's session by casting our minds back to sort of the pre-COVID world before it came crashing down on us in March, just to highlight some of the statistics around visitor spend, but also to highlight some of the great work that has been done to really champion food and drink promotion and development in Northern Ireland. So pre-COVID, our visitor spending levels associated with tourism were on track to break the £1 billion barrier in 2020. And our research tells us that, you know, out of that, visitors are spending 1/3 of their overall spend on food and drink. And that equates to about £350 million per year. So it's a massive economic driver, and it's a massive contributor to the local economy, and one that's important for us all to support and develop in the weeks and the months ahead. So in recent years, just to sort of recap where, you know, how we've come on this journey, there's been a real fantastic programme of events and initiatives that have championed our local food and drink. So, you know, looking back to the phenomenal success of the 2016 year of food and drink, and on the back of that, that Northern Ireland was awarded the prestigious accolade of Best Food Destination at the International Travel and Tourism Awards in 2018-19. More recently, you know, 2019 was a monumental year for tourism in Northern Ireland. The Open Championship made its historic return to Royal Portrush, and we gave visitors even more reason to visit Northern Ireland during the autumn by spotlighting the best of our local food and drink during last year's Taste the Island initiative. At World Travel Market in November of last year, we transformed how the world viewed Northern Ireland as a holiday destination with the launch of our new experience brand, Embrace a Giant Spirit. So just wanted to show that each of those milestones highlight the interest and the growth in our world-class people, our produce, and our experiences and events that are delivered by many of you all on today's webinar. So it's just to show the importance of that journey and how that sort of relates to us taking that step to move forward. So I can say with confidence, and I'm sure that each of you would agree, that none of us expected 2020 to get off to the start that it did. We don't have any real certainty on the future outlook, but what we do know is that our love of good food and drink and food tourism won't go away. Food travel, it might seem like a relatively new term or a new concept, but it has significantly changed over the past number of years. So food and drink tourism, it's no longer viewed as niche and only enjoyed by a small portion of the market. It's a growing element of the visitor experience, and visitors want more memorable food and drink experiences when they're in destinations. We also know that when it comes to food and drink, that visitors are prepared to pay a little bit more and to travel further for an experience that meets their needs. So as food and drink tourism continues to evolve, so must we as a destination and so must we as businesses to sustain the development of more drink and food experiences that have the potential to drive more visitors and to drive more spend into Northern Ireland. So by looking at the availability, but also the capacity of those experiences that are currently operating, we have the opportunity to connect visitors with the people and the culture of Northern Ireland. But now more than ever, we need to look at that domestic marketplace and to see how our experiences are currently resonating with the domestic visitor potential. We often use buzzwords like local and authentic, but the research is telling us that that is no longer enough. They're now expected by our visitors. So I think we need to go a bit deeper in terms of how we are positioning ourselves to ensure that we're gaining the standout and the recognition that we deserve for all of the efforts over the past number of years to promote Northern Ireland as a tourism destination. So our research tells us that people don't necessarily travel to Northern Ireland on the strength of our food and drink and our experiences. But what we do know is that we continue to exceed visitor expectations because they consistently tell us that what we delivered was much better than they had expected before they arrive in Northern Ireland. So this is a snapshot of the 2018 Visitor Attitude Survey, specifically looking at food and drink. So while it's not new research, it's just a gentle reminder that we still have a perception gap to bridge in Northern Ireland to ensure that we can compete with those other destinations, both close to home and abroad. It really drives up the need to raise the profile of our food and drink, to challenge those perceptions and to encourage more people to come to Northern Ireland to try the food and drink experience that awaits them when they come here. The results can be viewed in full on the website, but each of the council areas actually have their own survey card, and I think it's really important, but a really interesting read just to see the variances right across the regions within Northern Ireland. But the following sort of information is a Northern Ireland baseline. When we look at the results, I don't think that there's any major surprises here. Our fantastic hospitality staff continue to rate very favourably. Almost 9 in 10 visitors score them positively in terms of how friendly they are, about their welcome, about how efficient. But it shows that no matter what the price point, the good service is always expected. So it's good to see that it's on the menu when we're asking visitors for their feedback. More than 4 in 5 visitors rate the quality of our food and drink, and almost 2 in 5 give us a rating of excellent. But what's really important to us all, particularly now, as the latest wave of research tells us that the pandemic is having a significant financial impact on households across NI and ROI, that value for money is so important when it comes to food and drink consumption. Now, we're rated quite highly on that, but now more than ever, I think that particular element is going to be so important as businesses propel forward. So they were the positives, but where did visitors tell us that we could improve, and what were some of the areas that they said that we could do better? Visitors now, and hopefully some of the panelists will layer on top of that, they're more discerning when it comes to food and drink produce. They're more interested in where the ingredients are coming from. They want to know the food journey and what's presented to them in a plate. So our visitors are telling us that they want to see menus that reflect the place that they're in. And now more than ever, I think it's really important not only to support the local suppliers and industry in Northern Ireland, but shout about it and tell your visitors, because they do want to see more, and they're highlighting that as a potential gap. A lot of our businesses are already doing this already, but make sure that your visitors are aware of your commitment and the support that you give to the local producers. Bring the food journey to life. Tell them where the produce comes from and tell them what makes it special, because that is what they will remember. It's about elevating a dish to a memory or a dish to an experience. Research also indicated from visitors that we could do more in terms of menus to cater for those with dietary requirements. And this was rated excellent by very few of the respondents. So we've seen a rise in eating habits and varied diets, and visitors, particularly for restaurant visits, want to see more of this on the menu. they want more diversity, and they want to feel included in that dining experience. So now that we've sort of taken a look back, what does looking forward look like in the current climate? What we do know is that there's been massive challenges right across the tourism and the food and drink sector. Some have been able to open and respond to servicing visitors, and unfortunately, some other areas of the sector remain closed. But in light of the evolving situation, what does it mean for us as we move forward to respond to the needs of visitors? So after being in lockdown and having our movements restricted, the most important reasons for taking a short break in Northern Ireland largely remained the same, with the exception of food and drink. It's always been there and it's always been very, very popular. But if we look at the results in June, enjoying food and drink sat at about 28%, but the latest research wave has seen this surge to 34%. But with the caveat that visitors want to see more communication around how this can be enjoyed safely. So we've seen, the demand to enjoy our outdoor spaces, to connect with outdoor activities. But food and drink now is on the rise. People are thinking about venturing out. People are thinking about entering the sector. But now it's how we wrap that around and how we proposition businesses as safe, and that service and comfort can be guaranteed. We all seen the demand for the opportunities to eat out during August with the Eat Out to Help Out scheme. Tony will pick up on this a little bit later during the Q&A, but the initial results to the government-backed initiative has been really positive. Over 2,000 eateries across Northern Ireland participated in the scheme. And when you think there were 13 days really to avail of those discounts, and Northern Ireland served up 3 million meals, and the average discount per meal was £5.79. And despite the government scheme ending on the 31st of August, a number of restaurants are committed to extending the savings across the month of September. Other businesses have decided against additional discounts, and I want to see how the consumers respond to the new landscape. But with the caveat that there may be other added value experiences or maybe discounts to continue to drive footfall during the autumn and winter. So our consumer sentiment survey, which was released on the 19th of August, and we're currently out with our most up-to-date wave, and we'll bring that to you when we have it, gives an analysis on consumer confidence, propensity to travel, and it highlights any consumer concerns around travel within the island of Ireland. So as consumers, COVID-19 has changed our behaviours. We're more conscious of the world around us, we're more interested in the outdoors, and we're exploring parts of the country that we never visited before, we never thought to. And we've taken a keener interest in supporting the local communities and those that provide us with service. I know that Michelle and others will pick up on this, so I won't go too deep into this area, but we did pick up purchasing habits over the extended period of lockdown. And hopefully there's a sense that people will continue that local community support in the months ahead. And if that continues, then we all benefit from those transactions. The travel intentions suggest a more positive outlook is emerging, particularly in relation to domestic short breaks. 53% of Northern Ireland residents are planning to take a short break within the island of Ireland within the next 6 months. September and October remain popular intended months to make a trip, and indications continue to show that there's still an opportunity to drive footfall and traffic during the shoulder season. Just some other headlines sort of point to day trip visits and being popular with 25 to 35-year-olds, sort of that less risk-averse age bracket, one that I don't fit into anymore. But I can certainly identify with the other motivations that include escaping, relaxing, the enjoyment of our good food and drink. Consumers are telling us that reassurance on safety with clear and visible measures of implementation are the key actions that will make them feel comfortable in Northern Ireland. We at Tourism NI are encouraging all businesses to register for the We're Good to Go industry standard. It's an integral part of the ongoing efforts to market Northern Ireland as a short break destination, and will be so heavily weaved into all of our campaign efforts going forward. So just shining a bit of a spotlight on food and drink. During the early stages of lockdown, our challenge as an organisation was to balance the message between advising visitors to stay at home, don't come and visit, but we wanted to keep Northern Ireland at the forefront of the mind of the consumer. So when the landscape started to change, that we were still maintaining that warm dialogue with our social media followers, and to which we had about 500,000. So it was really important to keep them engaged during that time. I have to say that the food and drink sector really responded to our call out for content, and we had some of the highest levels of engagement with our recipes, baking, cookery demonstrations, cocktail making videos. But simplicity was key here. People were stuck at home. They were enjoying baking. They were enjoying home cooking again. And, you know, it was a great potential for us again to spotlight some of our experience providers, but also some of the great produce that we do have here in Northern Ireland. There has been a sustained push with the ongoing promotion of food and drink. And as soon as elements of the industry began to reopen, we couldn't wait to start to showcase that through our organic social content, the launch of our new website, discovernorthernireland.com, all highlighting the breadth and the strength of our food and drink experiences. I just wanted to touch. I've been really encouraged by recent conversations with local businesses, local councils across Northern Ireland, who have kept a close eye on the current landscape, and they want to make sure that they are responding to the needs, but also trying to capture the imagination of the domestic visitor. It's not always easy to cluster and collaborate and work together, but we're now starting to see small experience providers working to deliver something new. They're looking at maximising the needs of the outdoors with our great food and drink. And just a recent example is Canoe and Cook. It's a new experience where small groups can enjoy the sights of Strangford Lough from the water before heading to Tracy's traditional thatched cottage for tea and cake with the demonstration of traditional soda bread making. So we're seeing businesses now start to bridge that gap. They know what visitors want to engage and explore, and they're pulling that package and that proposition together to make it a bit easier for the domestic visitor to buy. Here at Tourism NI, I'm committed to further development of the food and drink sector, and in March of this year, we were due to deliver our food and drink experience development programme. Unfortunately, we had to cancel this due to COVID-19, but keep an eye on our updates, because I would hope to relaunch this again during the autumn period. So if you're currently delivering a food experience, wish to develop an experience, or you're interested in collaborating and connecting with others, please keep an eye out, because we do think this program will be of use and of value to you. There's been a tremendous push in the marketing of Northern Ireland. We really dialed up the message right across the island that a giant adventure awaits you here, and that you don't have far to go to uncover some world-class experience and the best of our food and drink. We've launched the new consumer website, which I think looks great, delivers much more user-friendly experience. And just yesterday, we launched a new television adverts and suite of creatives to sustain the great work that has already been done to date. So keep an eye out on your television screens. I personally think the new adverts are fantastic and showcase Northern Ireland in a totally different light. It's a departure from previous campaigns. But please do get involved with the huge amount of work that is ongoing. Make sure that you're getting the maximum exposure, not only on your own platforms, but within the wider recovery campaign with Northern Ireland through Tourism NI and through the local councils. Be bookable and online. Make it easier for the visitor to find you to make that transaction. But also make sure that you're registered on our website, discovernorthernireland.com, for maximum exposure. If you haven't already, I would encourage you to register for the Tourism NI industry standard. We know that the consumer sentiment is telling us that visitors want that reassurance. So, I would encourage everybody to get behind the industry standard. We're good to go in Northern Ireland. Join in the conversations online, tag us at DiscoverNI, use the hashtags Embrace a Giant Spirit. But if you've got a story to tell, a new experience, if you're trialing something new, please tell us, otherwise we may not know about it and you can't be a part of those conversations. And just lastly, before we hear from Michelle Sherlow, I just want to draw your attention to the Capital Experience Development Fund. This programme has been launched to develop new and compelling visitor experiences that will entice people to further explore and discover what Northern Ireland has to offer. It is going to be a competitive marketplace in the medium to long term ahead. We are accepting expressions of interest until the 14th of September. All of the eligibility, the programme aims, and additional information can be found on our website. But please let me know if you have any questions, and I'll be happy to talk you through that particular scheme. And I hope that gives everyone just an indication from a tourism perspective, not only the challenges, but the potential opportunities that might face us on the road ahead. So please, if you've got any questions or you want to pick up with me after the session, I'm happy to do so. And thank you very much for your time. So
Thank you, Gary. That was great. Really encouraging to hear, particularly that statistic about moving from 21% to 34%. That's just a fantastic reflection of the hard work that the industry's done. And thank you for the update. It's great to see all of the effort that Tourism and I are putting behind food and drink and the Good to Go campaign. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the past and a little bit about the future. I know that Tony's going to talk about things specifically around you know, the view from a chef in a restaurant. And I know that Sharon's going to talk about all the excellent work that's happening up with the council, up in Causeway Coast. But I just wanted to start to share with you some of the things that keep coming across my desk, or I should say my laptop, and that even over the last 2 years have been coming across more and more. So as Gary said, we had our first ever year of food and drink, 2016, and we won Best Food Destination. Really our ambition is to be the standout food and drink region in the UK and Ireland. And that's really what has been driving Food NI and Taste of Ulster and our 450 members. So I thought, how am I going to, I suppose, get across some of the recent successes? And one of the first things I did was I went and had a look at our website. So Michelle, could you move on to the next slide, please? So one of the first things I did was I just looked at the NI Good Food website and really went and looked at it since July. And you're probably wondering why I've got a block of cheddar cheese on the screen. I've also got a photograph of Boatyard Gin, our Dean's restaurant and Mourne Brewery. But just a couple of things that have come through over the last month that just reflect the amazing success that Northern Ireland has in food and drink. So Dromona, staple on our local shelves, it actually got Best Cheddar in the UK at the Virtual Cheese Awards in July. Boatyard Gin, you'll know from Fermanagh and the beautiful experience they offer down on the loch down there. They just have been listed in Waitrose. Alex Green, chef at Dean's Great British Menu. He's the only chef from Northern Ireland and one of the very few chefs to actually get through with 2 dishes to the final banquet, which is really an exceptional accolade. And here we have Tom Ray, brewer at Mourne. They won 2 golds and a silver in the Digital Beer Awards. Now that's just a tiny sample of much of the success that's reflected on our website. And the interesting thing about the pandemic was that success didn't stop. It kept coming and it kept coming. And in fact, if anything, probably there has been even more success about Northern Ireland chefs and products. But the thing that really made me proud of the food industry through the pandemic was the collaboration. And it was really, really interesting to see how people work together. On the producer side, there was a real producer and farm shop boom. And we saw a lot of pop-up shops, a lot of pop-up farm shops where people collaborated to get food into the community. I was really proud of the way that hospitality innovated. They not only did they innovate in their own restaurants, but they offered to help out with serving meals for people in need, the NHS, people who couldn't get into the city to get food. And there was a real community spirit right across the whole hospitality sector and across the producer side as well. Just a couple of examples that I noticed. Two individuals here, Lydia Hopkins and Justin Thompson, they set up a food delivery scheme all around Belfast, but there were also dozens and dozens of other people who did similar things. And another example, we worked with Mash Direct on a promotion, Dine In to Dine Out. So if you won a competition when you bought a Mash Direct product, you could get a meal in a Taste of Ulster restaurant, and there were about 100 winners in that category. The other thing that we saw happen over the last 3 months during the pandemic was what has been called pivoting. And just a couple of examples. The innovation was amazing. We saw hospitality open up. About 50% of restaurants opened up for either takeaway, for home delivery, or for meal solutions. As Gary alluded to earlier, people wanted experiences, and they wanted simple experiences. And one of the best experiences that I had during the pandemic was a pizza making kit from French Village Bakery, which was something that the whole family got involved in, and it was really a memorable experience, something I'll never forget. We didn't quite hit chef quality, but we did make pizzas. Then, as I said earlier, the opening of farm shops and pantries. And what was amazing was the way the local industry here really collaborated and helped one another. Over the last 10 years, people have been, I suppose, rubbing shoulders at events like Legendary, Comber Potato Festival, and there's a whole community out there of people in food and drink who know each other. So local producers helped restaurants to open pantries or farm shops. They also helped one another to supply products to make sure that even if I was, for example, there was somebody locally who was an egg producer, he set up a farm shop, but it included bacon, Clandy Boy yogurt, and in fact, that actually is probably a pop-up shop that will become a food destination over the next couple of years. We also heard of some innovation with street food, pairing up with people who had bars, and so they could serve food and they continue to trade. And the other thing that came through very strongly was a delivery of ready meals, but this time very much an emphasis on health. And this is something that I want to talk about in a bit more detail later, but health was certainly something very strongly on the agenda. Just two examples that I've picked up out here are, first of all, you've got Ashley French of the French Village. They transformed their restaurant into a food destination shop. And you had Jawbox, who worked with Hastings Hotels, to have a Jawbox bar outside in the grounds of the Culloden Hotel. So earlier, Gary had talked about localism. And I think the one thing that I've seen in the last couple of years becoming a much stronger theme is really localism, but linked to sustainability. Prior to the pandemic, localism and sustainability were really already on the agenda, but the pandemic very much sped that change along. And as Gary said earlier, food and drink tourism is really now quite mainstream. It's really a growing part of our psyche. There's absolutely no doubt about it. Northern Ireland has it in spades. We are actually twice as productive in food and drink than any other region in the rest of the UK, and that doesn't even reflect the quality of what we do. But all of the research that's coming in from the major consultancy houses are saying that there's a growing love for local, even multinational food businesses need to reflect their business somehow in the local community, and consumer goods really need to find ways to connect with local provenance. So taking a long-term view, because we've talked a lot about the pandemic, this cartoon caught my eye, and it's on the next slide. So this did make me laugh in a way, and not wanting to make light of a very serious situation. But I mean, everybody's been focused on COVID, but what are the long-term challenges and what's coming up the track once we get through COVID? As Gary alluded to, there will be a recession. Value is going to be very important, but still consumers are very focused on climate change. They're very focused on biodiversity collapse, and longer term, I think these are the sorts of things that we really need to think about whenever we're developing food tourism products in Northern Ireland. So in many ways, I would argue that we are moving beyond local food in many ways to think about sustainable food and to think about healthy food. I was amazed that during the pandemic, even the Prime Minister came out and said that his recovery from COVID would have been quicker, would have been faster had he been healthier. And this is just something, again, that is a trend over the last 2 years. The focus on health has been getting stronger and stronger in terms of food and predictions, which is why it was encouraging to hear Gary talk about even the outdoor activity and food being linked together. The other thing that's happening is consumers are definitely more conscious, and so there's been this rise in conscious consumerism. People have gone beyond just food waste. They actually are now looking for more sustainable options. And so companies have to address this. And I actually think this is something where Northern Ireland could have a significant advantage, because we have a lot of trusted local brands that we know are good for the environment and that are good for us. And the things that I think that are unique about Northern Ireland and that I think that we need to exploit are, first of all, our connectedness. We're very connected in the food and drink community. We're very connected in the hospitality community, and we can lever that for advantage in the future. Also, the quality of our produce. I just gave you a few examples earlier, but literally that is the tip of the iceberg. And I would encourage you to look at your region and look at what quality brands you have around you, what award winners you have, and to collaborate with them. Also, the opportunity to experience food and drink in Northern Ireland. It's so close to us, and it's not like you have to travel a long way to enjoy it. And that's reflected in the vibrant food and drink movements that you see in Causeway Coast in Glens, in Armagh, Banbridge, Craigavon, in Derry City and Strabane with Legendary, and in Ards and North Down. And if I've left anybody out, pick up with me afterwards, but those are just the ones that struck me, because Legendary has just launched a new brand, and and Armagh, Banbridge and Craigavon are going ahead with their Food Insider weekend the end of this month, even though it is socially distanced. So, a report from World Food Travel Association put out some predictions for the new food tourism in 2020. It says that our love of good food and drink will continue, that there will be a greater respect for and interest in local culinary culture and sustainability, strong opportunity to diversify in beverage products and experiences. As we would expect, health and safety will continue to be of concern, but may create new opportunities. It talked about contactless products, and it also talked about new culinary experience for differently abled travellers, and that's a theme that's coming through as well. People who are not normal tourists, who you would expect to engage with, but people who maybe in the past you thought maybe were slightly on the margins. And it talks about smaller companies gaining market share, weaker businesses pivoting to new business models, possibly a reduction in gourmet and luxury, and younger people delaying their adoption of new food and drink experiences. But just to finish, I suppose my predictions for Northern Ireland would be to think about the following. I think that here are the themes that Northern Ireland needs to take into account. more people are caring about the state of the planet, and that's coming through very much in sustainable food. There's a very strong rise in conscious consumerism. There's actually a move to regenerative economies, which is away from, I suppose that's looking beyond just waste reduction, but actually looking at ways that we can regenerate biodiversity. And a very good example of that is NEP over in England, which is a farm which has, in a sense, retreated back to the wild. And they offer wildland safaris where you can go and see local nature. To me, tourism and hospitality will become more than just individual businesses. As Gary says, it will be people reaching out and almost creating like a local hosting community for tourists, and going beyond, but with food and drink right at the heart and playing a central role in all of that. And thank you very much for listening. Those would be my predictions for Northern Ireland's food and drink tourism going forward.
Thank you so much, Michelle. That was, again, great insights, and it's great to see all the different opinions from different ranges across the sector as well. So thank you so much. I'm sure people got a lot out of that, and they'll be looking forward to those predictions coming in the future. So we're going to just pass on now to Tony O'Neill from Copy and Bubba, and we're just going to play a video, a Q&A session around what's happening in the restaurant sector as well.
So Tony, what was your immediate response to business closure during COVID-19?
I suppose the first reaction was how were we going to get look after our staff was our main priority at the time. At the very start of this, there had been no mention of furlough or support or in any way. So we had closed before the furlough kicked in, but we had agreed to pay the staff during that time. But quite quickly, the furlough scheme kicked in, and that was it was a godsend from the government. It was a lifeline for all industries to keep us going. So really, myself and Andrea, my wife, who's the business partner in Copy and Bubba with me, we had taken about 4 weeks off and sort of tried to decide what we would do. So we had, through that time, we decided that we would offer a taste of the cook at home, Copy and Bubba, and it was really about trying to keep the restaurants very relevant at the time. I had also been doing online cookery demonstrations, pre-recorded and live, and there was a great interaction with that, and people were really, you could see people were really embracing the cook at home and the gardening, and they were almost getting back into that good life sort of scenario. So after that, and we had, the more I'd done the cookery online, and people were commenting to me how much they'd missed, like one of our signature dishes would be the duck ragu out of Copy, and people were really asking how they really missed that. So I had tried to do, because it's such a complex dish, I couldn't really, it's one that would take maybe 2 or 3 days to complete at home. So I'd done a cheats version for people, but it quickly became apparent that people wanted to see, still to taste their favourite restaurants at home. So myself and my wife decided to get back in. I went into the kitchen. I was able to bring 2 chefs back, which was quite important, to try and get them back in, and I put it out there to my staff who would want to come back, and two guys straight away wanted back in out of the monotony of lockdown. I think others enjoyed it, some didn't. And also I have a 20-year-old daughter and an 18-year-old son. I was able to bring them back into help as well with packaging and labelling and getting the orders and all. And my sister and my nephew, who also came down and worked with us. So it was a bit of a family affair, and I was able to bring a couple of staff back as well. But one of the other more important things was trying to give out a lifeline to some of the suppliers that were out there that we have used for a long time. So my first thought was, are we going to be able to get supplies in first? So as I rang the suppliers, they were delighted that something, I suppose, was coming back. But a lot of suppliers had tried to modify from fish boxes at home to veg boxes at home, which was fantastic. But I think they were glad to see some momentum coming back from the restaurants that the supply to just give them. It was never really going to be a big money maker for us, but it was more about keeping the restaurants out there in the public domain, keeping them relevant, keeping people talking about them. And so people didn't sort of forget too much about it and cook too much at home. So, but it was good that way.
And what were your thoughts on the Eat Out to Help Out scheme during August?
I thought it was very, very, very good. It was a well thought out scheme, because it probably was more. I know a lot of people seem to think it should be named at September, October, but I think it was more about giving people confidence to get back out again. More than anything else, it was half price up to £10 off the maximum meal, which is great. It'll give you a bit of a discount, but it was more about that confidence of getting people back out there and realizing that as restaurants and industry all over, we've done so much work in the background to put so many safety measures into place, and we haven't taken this lightheartedly. We've really been at the forefront of driving this. I'm vice chair of Hospitality Ulster, and I've sat on a board that was sort of an industry response group that had a direct link into the executive, and we sort of came up with a lot of the sort of the things that we could achieve, and so it took a lot of the burden off the executives, so they could feel confident that they could get their restaurants back open, and we were all on board with doing things as safely as possible.
How do you manage the transition from high touch areas to no touch areas?
Obviously, the first thing we had to do was remove seats. Kobe's quite a large restaurant, and Bubba on the flip side is quite a small restaurant, so both of them had their own problems in that way. Kobe being a large space, it was quite easy to remove tables and still keep a bit of a feel. We put up screens originally, but we took them out, and because we liked them so much actually that we took the perspex out and put glass in them now, so they're actually a permanent fixture of the restaurant now. And really it was about us giving confidence. Obviously most people want to feel safe when they come into the restaurants. Some of them don't like, the visors and the masks and the hand sanitizers but they're few and far between where they are. I think that the majority of people are very happy that you've went the extra mile and put that in place. But for me, whenever I'm doing a restaurant, my thing is, obviously you've got food and service, which are very important factors of a restaurant dining out experience. But equally as important is the ambience of a restaurant. So my biggest fear was, how do we reduce capacity, put up screens everywhere, sanitizers, visors, but keep that ambience, and there's sort of things behind the ambience, like, is the heating right, is the lighting right, is the sound level right, trying to get all those things balanced perfectly. And the first thing we found when we put up the dividers and between the blanket seating down the middle was it changed the acoustics of the restaurant. So we had to think hard about that as well. It actually made Kobe a little bit more intimate, where Kobe had always been a high volume restaurant, and the music would go up a bit louder at night. So all that had to change, but we wanted to still keep Kobe as the ethos of Kobe. So it was just tweaking around, setting the volumes right and getting the right music, changing all the playlists, looking at the lighting, and even changing a bit of the lighting around in the restaurant, so we could sort of create more of a sort of a nice sort of intimate mood in the restaurant. And it's worked really well, but it would be one of the big things, I think, as a restaurateur, that it is about food and service, obviously, but it's trying to get that ambience level, because to me, ambience is every bit as important as the food and the service.
Chefs are used to working at pace, so how did you find the downtime during COVID-19?
It was good to be able to take a step back and sort of look at your business and analyze your business, without the day-to-day pressures of, it's just the usual pressures of a restaurant of running, making sure all the staff are there and making sure everything's running smoothly. So it really did give us a chance to step back and look at it from the outside in, because when you're in a restaurant every day, you're always looking from the inside out, so it's good to step back a little bit and just have a good look and see, where is the restaurant going to be. Obviously, we have had to diversify. The model has for all restaurants has completely changed. Volume doesn't exist anymore, so you're still trying to create that that balance of giving out a good experience. Obviously, staffing levels need to be higher now because of all the safety practices that are put in place. So it's looking at the model of the restaurant, making sure that you can make it work and making sure it's viable. But having that 4 weeks really give us time to think about how we were going to achieve that and how we would do it.
Well, due to the success of the Eat Out to Help Out scheme, a number of restaurants have extended their discounts throughout September. Is this something that you've considered?
No, we wouldn't consider it at all. I think it was great when it was there, and it was brilliant to bring confidence back. But I do think hospitality as an industry has been struggling for a lot of years, even before this pandemic started. I do think the industries, there's a lot of, we need to change the whole model, all staff on minimum wage and working long hours in the kitchen and change all that. Our chefs don't work any more than 40 hours a week, and they haven't done for a long time. We changed that years ago, because I do think it's important to have that work-life balance. But if we keep discounting and discounting and discounting, the profit line becomes so small that you have to revert back to the old ways where chefs are doing 60, 70 hours a week in the kitchen. Everybody's getting burnt out and tired. We had a massive problem with recruitment for our industry, trying to get people out before this pandemic even started. During the pandemic, it seems a lot of chefs have changed industry, and that's even become not so much now, because obviously we're down on turnover at the minute, but it will in the future as we come out of the pandemic, whatever way that looks in the next couple of years. We're going to really be struggling to find staff to come into our industry. I think by offering really all these discounts constantly, like really cheap lunches and cheap pre-theatre meals, and I think it actually does devalue hospitality as an industry, and it makes people just really want to go out for the bargains, and then everybody tries to undercut each other. But it's not good for it's just really not good for the workforce and for everything else going forward. And I just think we need to professionalise hospitality to a far greater than it ever has been before, where it is actually a desirable industry to work.
Tony, you do a lot of work with the Ulster University Business Academy to promote hospitality as a career. Can you explain why this is important to you?
I really think that we need to encourage the next generation to come through. A lot of emphasis is put on kids now to go to university, to come through, but the sort of trades like the hospitality industry, even electricians, plumbers, joiners, they're sort of disappearing a lot. We actually do need to get almost like, I don't know if it's an apprenticeship scheme back up and running or something that would encourage kids. Not all kids are academic and not all kids want to go on to university. I certainly wasn't, but that doesn't mean it's wrong, but it's good to have a good outlet for that. So I want to help encourage people to come into our industry. But I do think there's a lot of work to be done in hospitality as a whole to professionalise it and to make it a desirable industry to come into, because at the minute it's not, and kids are discouraged, especially going into kitchens, because of all the bad press over years of a chef standing at the pass, screaming, shouting, working hard hours, working antisocial hours, off working every weekend. So it's trying to change that image of the industry.
Tony, what do you think can be done to combat no-shows at restaurants? Do you think that reserving a table online makes visitors less inclined to honour the reservation?
Yes, it does. But we have now put on our online booking system takes credit card details now. So if you don't, and you can cancel your table up to an hour, half an hour beforehand. We understand things happen, and we're not saying you shouldn't be allowed to cancel. Of course you can cancel. When people cancel, contact us, tell us. We are delighted and more than happy, because we usually have a waiting list of people waiting to take those tables. But now we do take a £20 per head off you now if you don't show up. We were going to go in at £10, but we decided to to make it so people understand that how much it costs a restaurant. I know people say, "Oh, but you can sell that table." But if we're holding the table for 8 o'clock, we can't even think about selling that table until at least 8:30. But we also can't sell that table beforehand. So there's a whole 2.5 hour slot that you've missed out on that night, so the table can't be used. Because if we give it away 5 minutes after your booking and you walk in 10 minutes late, then we're the worst in the world. So it's having that balance. But we've found now, since we've started taking the credit card details, that it has completely stopped now, and we haven't had any at all. Some people don't like it at all and feel, but we're the thing saying, well, that's okay but we do need to take these details to secure. The majority of people who, I mean, anytime I go to London or anywhere like that and I book into a restaurant, even Dublin, they all take my credit card details online now. So I think it just has to become the norm. Like none of us as restaurants, we don't want to be penalising anybody for not showing up. But if you can go online and book, you can go online and cancel, or you can ring the restaurant and cancel. You know, it's Res Diary, Open Table, all these booking systems allow you, and it's just one button. Do you want to cancel your reservation? You hit one button, yes. It's very easy.
Knowing what we do know now, how do you envisage the next 6 months? And do you have any important messages for the industry?
I think the next 6 months, Guy, are going to be really, really, really crucial. And I would advise anybody out there to really sit down. And obviously we can't really forecast or at the minute, because we really don't, we're in uncharted waters and we really don't know what the month by month is going to hold for us. But it's really to look at your business model. I mean, we've got September, October, November coming in. Usually December comes by, we all rely on December. We can maybe do 3 months trade in a month of December. That's not going to be there this year. We've had people trying to book Christmas parties, but you don't even know what you can tell them at the minute, because we don't know how. You can provisionally take a booking, but we have to wait and see what the guidelines are closer to the time. And then it's going to be a struggle to get past that Christmas, and then you're into January, February, which again are notoriously quiet months for our industry. So it's really sitting down, trying to plan out how do you get to that point, because even then we come into March and hopefully things start to come around. You know, March we'll see where we are around that time, but then everybody in the restaurant industry has probably deferred quite a large VAT bill. The potentially taken on a bounce back loan of some sort, then they're going to want that paid back. You know, so you're going to have to start looking at what way will the inland revenue want their deferred VAT back? Are they going to let us pay it off over time? How much time will that be? And will we really be able to afford to do that? And then as the bounce back loans kick in as well. So really, I would just urge everybody to have a really good think about right up until the end of the financial year, and then starting from April, how do you start the next year? Because you will have these payback loans of VATs and bounce back loans to pay back. So it's really just trying to be ahead and plan. And I mean, obviously we've had the 5% VAT on food cut. I'm still looking at that. It's very much, we're working on the 20%, and I'm still putting that into a separate account. So that sits there and takes over. I'll just leave it there, and hopefully come next year, there'll be enough in there to help us get started and to get away. But I would just urge people to sort of think about that and try and put some money away, even if it's a separate account. Don't touch it, and then at least it's something there to get 2021 hopefully off to a better start.
Have you identified any opportunities or positives during COVID-19?
During lockdown, we had actually launched, before the pandemic started, we had the idea of launching a Southeast Asian concept called Lucky Devil. Now, through the at-home boxes, we actually launched that through the lockdown, and we were selling out every week, and there was a huge demand for this. And to me, it's something myself and Andrea are maybe going to look into. We are looking into it at the minute, you know, maybe on a very more casual. It was going to be a restaurant sort of type scenario, but, you know, we're maybe looking at that now as a more very casual takeaway sort of concept, you know, that might be something that we'd look into because the restaurant sector is so hard at the minute and so many restrictions that it's just maybe another outlet that we might look to explore in the next few months.
We'd now like to welcome William Lavelle from Irish Whiskey 360 to give us a bit of insight into what's happening in the drink sector. So welcome, William.
Hi, Michelle, and thank you and thank Gary and the whole team at Tourism and I for the invitation to join you here this morning. And actually the presentations to date have been really good, really high quality. Great to see so much exciting and positive stuff going on despite, I suppose, the troublesome backdrop we're all working in. So just to introduce myself, my name is William Lavelle. I head up the Irish Whiskey Association, which is the all-Ireland representative body for the Irish whiskey industry. We have 44 member companies representing 96% of production and 98% of global sales, so pretty representative. And we're part of Drinks Ireland, which is an all-Ireland federation representing the broader drinks industry, so other spirits, beer, cider, wine and porters. As part of the Irish Whiskey Association, we are home to Irish Whiskey 360, which is a relatively new collective of 19, and that'll very soon be 21. Actually, I think as of today, it could even be 20 as the Shed Distillery in Drumshanbo opened. But 20 distilleries and brand homes around the island of Ireland who offer an Irish whiskey visitor experience. We had a soft launch of Irish Whiskey 360 last September as part of the Taste the Island initiative, and our full website launched early in January of this year. And I suppose we launched it as the start of an incremental process, but obviously that process throughout the year was, you know, didn't go the route we expected it to go, and I'll come back to that. So just on the next slide, just briefly, just really, there's a list of some of our members, and there's more to be added to that as people open over coming weeks and months. I'm particularly looking forward to the Hinch Distillery in County Down opening in the near future, and obviously there's well-known Northern Ireland whiskey distilleries, Bushmills, Radaman Estate, Ecklandville there, and there's others which we're working with in terms of future opening, particularly Crumlin Road in Belfast. So if we move on, just a bit of context. Last year, 2019, our members between them took in just over 1 million visitors. And that was a real high point, and it's been growing really significantly, particularly in the last 3 years. Last year, visitors, as I say, were up. And what we saw last year in particular was an increase in domestic visitors, up 16%, but also a very strong increase in German visitors. Despite that, North America remained our key destination. And overall, 87% of visitors to Irish whiskey distilleries last year, 2019, came from outside the island of Ireland. 87%. If I move to the next slide, with that in mind, we began, as I say, Irish Whiskey 360 earlier in the year. We began advertising in, like a lot of you would do, Cara magazine, other outlets. And because North America was so important, we began working with Tourism Ireland. And I think some of the Tourism Ireland Canada team are actually on this webinar, but we had a really successful event in Toronto with a large number of media, travel media, food and drink media, discussing and highlighting what Irish whiskey tourism has to offer. We had Bushmills and other distilleries participating in that. And we also tied in not just whiskey, but the Irish food. So really talking to a North American tourist audience about Irish food and drink tourism on an all-island basis. And of course, that was back in January and February. If we move on, next slide, we are then hit come early March with the onset of the pandemic. As I said, 87% of our visitors in 2019 were outside the island of Ireland. So that posed us a very serious challenge. And very quickly we realized that, you know, there was a potential this year for a 70 to 80% decline in visitor numbers. And I think there was a lesson for us. And it really came through to me, when I think in the space of 1 hour, I took a phone call from the manager of one of our biggest distilleries and also the owner of a small distillery, both of which taking tourists. And nearly using the exact same words, they said to me, "We don't know how to talk to domestic tourists." The reality is our industry had been very much focused on international tourists, particularly the coach tour groups working with incoming tour operators, but increasingly, particularly over the last 2 years, increasing number of walk-in international tourists, particularly in the cities, who were obviously booking their own trip, their own visits. But the fact was, we were not focused on domestic island of Ireland tourists. And very quickly that needed to change. And what we saw were responses at individual and collective level. What we also saw was people working together in a very developmental way, because everyone was facing the same challenge. And the discussions that happened in that period from March through the early summer happened very much at also the collective level. And there was a lot of collective brainstorming going on, because as I say, we were an industry that was predominantly focused on getting visitors from outside the island of Ireland. Moving on, just to touch quickly on some of the individual efforts that people made, and I'll just move on to the next slide, please. Okay, actually, so before that, so the strengths. What we've done as a collective, as I say, was we looked very carefully at what we had to offer. So we looked at the strengths of our sector. The fact that Irish whiskey distilleries are putting craft and authenticity on display. You can get to see it firsthand, how Irish whiskey is made. It's craft, of course, we have a geographic indication. Irish whiskey can only be made on the island of Ireland. Ireland is the home of whiskey. We've been making it longer than any other country in the world. Tying in, I think, to some of the previous presentations, we were very conscious that we were part of Ireland's broader food and drink offering. And we realized that there was a tourist segment out there who were very keen on food and drinks. Obviously, 12 million cases, that's over 140 million bottles of Irish whiskey were sold in the 12 months leading up to February. So a lot of, and in that 6 million, over 6 million bottles sold on the island of Ireland. So there's a lot of whiskey consumers out there, but surprisingly, many of them wouldn't have visited the home of their favorite whiskey. So that was something we could play with. Irish whiskey distilleries, and no different to other distilleries and other breweries, are very experiential. They're very hands-on. They're fun and they're enjoyable, but they're also educational. And I think that experiential offering was something we knew that we could play on. There was a reality that safety was going to be important. So a lot of our distilleries began immediately thinking, how can we offer more intimate tour offerings, smaller groups? So maybe rather than taking 15, 20 people on a tour, can we take less than 10? Can we run smaller tours, but more frequently? And that became a very big concern. And all of our distilleries looked very quickly at how they can deliver that. And we realized it's something that could be done. And finally, and I was very interested in Michelle's discussion on localism, at that pivot to local. While we were looking to bring in more visitors from domestically, we were encouraging domestic visitors to come and visit those attractions on your doorstep. And also, just very few people in Dublin have actually visited Jameson, even though it is the singly most visited whiskey distillery in the entire world. So we began playing on that fact that these were world famous attractions on your doorstep. I want to say big thanks about Tourism NI and also Fáilte Ireland, who, during the first few weeks of lockdown, were very active in, running a consumer insight research. And obviously that evolved as time went on, and particularly as people began planning and looking forward to the post-lockdown period. And there were some findings out of that we took to help inform what we needed to do, but again, at an individual and collective level. So the concept of reunion tourism, the fact that people were saying, we want to reconnect with family and friends. And for us, understanding that people might want to get back and meet their friends and groups of friends in new attractions in new ways was very important. 44% of those intending to travel wanted to do so with their partner. And also something coming true in a qualitative way was the fact that people wanted to create memories, and that was very important. So we looked at our strengths, we looked at our insights, and both, as I said, at an individual and collective level, we began planning for how do we talk to domestic tourists going forward. Moving on to the next slide, at an individual level, the picture on the left is Powerscourt Distillery in County Wicklow. What you'll see is that they have food. So they developed a new food and whiskey pairing tour. So it's a tour distillery, but as part of it, you didn't just get to taste the whiskey, but you got led by a culinary expert on what worked well in terms of whiskey and food pairings. What was very interesting here is that obviously that tour was charged at a much higher price point, and it sold out. It was actually, I think, a 3 or 4 week waiting list to get on this tour. So this was an example of our numbers are going to be way down. We're obviously going to be targeting our basic tour package at domestic visitors, but why don't we premiumize as well and try to bring in more revenue by offering more exclusive premium tour offerings? And that was a really good example. Rowan Co Distillery, which only opened last year in the old Guinness power plant in St. James's Gate in Dublin, they were only really kicking off. They were only getting the name out there, and then the pandemic hit. So what they did is decide, look, let's continue our development work. So they put in place a cocktail garden. And immediately they began pivoting and promoting what they had to offer, not just as a whiskey tour, but as a cocktail experience as well. And obviously having outdoor space in the summer months was very positive. So that's an example how people began responding and offering, new experiences to domestic tourists as a way of trying to, I suppose, reboot post-lockdown. If I move on now to collective efforts, we come up with the tagline, get back into the spirit. And obviously the get back into really played on that idea of people want to get out after lockdown, want to get back meeting their friends. And get back into the spirit, obviously play on the word spirit, but back into the spirit of friendship, back into the spirit of discovery. So we use this as a tagline for, it wasn't a big campaign, but to be honest, we didn't have a big budget, but we ran a campaign over the second half of July and into early August that was focused on media and digital. And actually that's an example of an ad that we had in some of the national newspapers in the Republic. We move on then. What this campaign involved was, next slide. So we'd advertising the Irish Times and online via Google, Instagram and Twitter. We'd paid features in the Irish Times and the journal.ie, and we'd earned media across national and local newspapers. One lesson there was that actually the success at local media level. Again, a lot of distilleries hadn't tapped in to their local audience, even within their own county. And we found that by using local newspapers, local radio, we actually were able to attract a lot of tourists to, as I say, those distilleries on their doorsteps. Obviously, because some of our Northern Irish members were not open, the focus was predominantly in this first wave on the south, but as we get into further waves of this campaign, there will be more focus on media in Northern Ireland. And indeed, there's a few other big things planned. TV3 Ireland's AM are broadcasting from a distillery that's due this week. And in total, over I think the 2 weeks at the end of July, we'd reach 1.5 million through just our digital advertising and our paid features. A small budget, first wave of a campaign, but actually I think we got very good feedback, and actually most importantly, very good feedback from our members, who were hearing, when people are coming, how do you hear about this? We saw it advertised. We saw it advertised through Irish Whiskey 360. So, as I say, we got positive feedback from our members, which I suppose for us was the most important metric. Moving on, how's it going? The big thing you want to know. Slow but steady visitor numbers. Obviously, when the 87% of international or visitors is gone, there's no way you're going to be competing with the same level of visitor numbers. But it's been slow, it's been steady, and indeed some of our members have been surprised, particularly at weekends in terms of the numbers coming through. a big finding, and this was, I suppose, really positive because our consumer insight research and our pre-planning suggested to us that couples would be important, and that has actually turned out to be the case. In many cases, couples are the leading visitor segment, and indeed people reporting that distilleries are suddenly proving to be a hot date spot for your post-lockdown date. So who'd have thought, but something that we'll take to business however it comes. Groups of friends, really important, that reunion holiday, saying, look guys, particularly, and not just guys, but also among females, but particularly the younger demographic, people wanting to get out and meet friends from college or friends from work who you may just not have seen. And where do we go? Well, distilleries are a great opportunity. And during the staycation period, a lot of family units would come along. Obviously, we made a deliberate effort not to focus on families for obvious reasons, but a lot of our distilleries have reported back that, you know, families were coming on visits. And again, I mentioned the higher price premium tour offerings proved really successful for some distilleries. So look, we're not going to, these numbers are not going to set the world on fire, but it is, I suppose, positive compared to, I suppose, the really dire prospects the sector was facing. I think one of my last slides is up next, which is what next. So obviously we're examining options for further waves of advertising and promotion among Island of Ireland customers. One thing we're doing at the moment is to promote is developing videography, video content to promote regional clusters, and that'll be a good project. We're looking at partnership with the on-trade, and we're in discussion with a number of hotel groups on how, and collectives on how we could partner up between hotels and distilleries in terms of offering potentially visits to distilleries as part of you know, weekend break packages, but also using the hotels as, you know, centres to promote the whiskey and the spirits from those distilleries. And we've done a good bit of work over recent weeks on developing content on Irish whiskey, cocktail and food pairing offerings. So taking some of the best learning so that we can package that and offer content to and tips to our visitors. A big challenge for us in the last few weeks in the south has been the 6-person limit that was placed on guided tours. Now, I saw actually on the chat bar that the government down here has made a decision to open the wet pubs for the 21st of September. So we're awaiting clarification on whether the 6-person limit on guided tours in visitor attractions will also be lifted. It has proved very problematic. Some of our distilleries, and not just in Dublin, but in rural towns, part of their business plan and part of their viability depended on being able to run a significant number of tours on a Saturday in particular. We'd always said there should be no limit on numbers as long as physical distancing can be achieved. But unfortunately, the 6-person limit was brought in and it has proven very difficult. The Island of Ireland will remain the key focus in the short term and probably in the medium term. Beyond that, we are going to be looking in 2021 and early 2021 in extending promotion back to GB and Germany. So the type of stuff we started earlier this year in Canada and US, and bringing that to GB and Germany, as we feel they are two incredibly strong markets for Irish whiskey. And indeed, the guys in Tourism Ireland in Germany came back with a very interesting comment to say that, you know, the percentage of visitors from Germany to the Island of Ireland visiting a whiskey distillery is higher than for any other type of attraction. So we're targeting that demographic and that segment as we seek to extend, I suppose, beyond the Island of Ireland. And finally, just to say, state agency support is vital. So whether that's Tourism and Fáilte Ireland, Tourism Ireland, we're very grateful for the support we have got from the 3 agencies on an all-island basis. I'd like to thank Gary and the team for the support. Obviously, the entire sector, the entire tourism industry is facing challenges, and there's no big pile of money available from any government to help us all out. But what the state agencies have been doing is very important, and this webinar indeed is a very timely example of that. So just wanted to say that. So look, that's all from me. Very happy to take questions if there's any. So thank you for the opportunity to present.
Thank you so much, William. Again, another great insight into a different sector within the food sector. So now we are going to have Sharon Scott from Taste Causeway, who again is going to talk a little bit about what they are doing up on the North Coast. So I will hand over to you, Sharon, and let you work away.
Okay, thanks, Michelle. I'm the facilitator for Taste Causeway, the local food and drink network up in the Causeway Coast and Glens, and I'm going to talk to you a bit. And I'm representing really today the food and drink businesses who've really been at the coal face through the pandemic. We affectionately know it up here as the Corona coaster, and we have gone through all the roller coaster rides in relation to that. And we really have seen what we've done today, going through sort of 3 periods really, and you've sort of heard that reflected through some of the presentations already. We talked about the react and the reboot and the regroup stage, and how we've moved through those. So we'll go to the next slide, please, Michelle. So yeah, reacting, rebooting and regrouping. As we look back, and again, as I was chatting to some of the members today of Taste Causeway Online, how do we sum up the last sort of 6 months in 15 minutes? It's really an impossible task given what we've gone through and what we've learned along the way. So I'm just going to give you a bit of a snapshot today of how we've reacted and our recovery journey back to what we're doing as we go through. So basically, I'll talk to you a bit about first Taste Causeway and what it is. Taste Causeway, it is a brand. It's a brand that we've been operating for the last 1.5 years. Taste Causeway is a collaborative growth network which is supported by Invest Northern Ireland and Causeway Coast and Glens Borough Council up here, and also the members itself. The collaborative growth network is really member and business driven. There's a committee that run the business plan. There's a 3-year approved business plan that we are developing, and obviously we were merrily on our way with that. We were just about to head off to Borough Market with Michelle and the Food NI team when the Corona pandemic hit us all. The flights were booked, the bags were packed, and then suddenly the wheel really came off for us on a lot of things. We were developing lots of events, and everything suddenly changed. Next slide, please, Michelle. So as it said, it is a collaborative network led by businesses themselves. There's a committee that run the plan, run the organisation of the business. It's a community interest company now, and that's been very, very important, and something which has really seen us through the last few months as the businesses can come together and collaborate. The brand is very important. It is a collaborative brand that allows every part of our food and drink industry to work together, whether it be makers, retailers, hospitality. We can come together and showcase our distinctive food and drink offer, and most importantly, our visitor experience. And it's a digital platform. I am supported by a digital facilitator. I think he's on the webinar today, who does all things techie and really drives forward our digital. And we'll talk to you throughout the course of this presentation of how important digital has been to us as we move forward, and the opportunities that's throwing up as we move forward to recovery. That's just a host of some of the businesses that are involved. It's a mixture of small businesses and the very largest ones like Fishmills Distillery, Glens of Antrim Potatoes. It's a cross sector. We are right across the supply chain in food and drink, and that's been very, very important going forward, that we are represented and the voice is heard from every part of the food and drink sector. Next slide, please, Michelle. We've really 6 work streams, and this has been really carefully thought through, and something that we are now obviously re-evaluating, as some of the earlier speakers have alluded to. It is about logistics and distribution. It's about getting that food and drink from farm to the plate, to the retail, and how we've changed that over the last 6 months. Digital has been vitally important, both on a business-to-business level of how the businesses can communicate effectively, but also very much business to consumer, and how we drive that food and drink message out to the consumer. Marketing and communications was an essential part of what we were doing, and we've had to really pivot, as the word is used, to how we address the new situation. Training and upskilling, business support, the whole accreditation thing has been something you've heard a lot of already this morning from my colleagues. And again, we are forefront of leading this through at the local level to make sure that our food and drink businesses are skilled up and ready to address the opportunities and the challenges ahead. Next slide, please, Michelle. So when we look back at what we've been through, our Corona coaster journey, again, like some of the other speakers have mentioned, the first stage was all about reacting. It was about accessing the COVID support that was hitting us on a regular basis. We really had to look creatively of how we did this. We were all isolated right across the Causeway Coast and Glens. It's a huge area. Some of our businesses were very rurally positioned. So we really had to think carefully of how we put that support out there. So what we found really was our membership and our engagement spiked immensely over this period. Businesses saw the need to collaborate. We actually set up WhatsApp groups with 30 hospitality people on a WhatsApp group communicating night and day around the whole introduction of the furlough scheme, the grants, really supporting each other. My role as facilitator was really to channel the information out, but allow the businesses to help each other in an area that they were familiar with. And that certainly worked well, and is something as we move towards recovery is really helping. It was a solid foundation for growth around engagement. The pivoting to home delivery on the producer side was fast, it was intense, and it certainly was a real challenge, and we'll give you some examples in the future slides. We really had to work about collaborating and working effectively with our key partners. This had always been part of our agenda, and it really came into its own over this stage, whether it be Invest NI, Tourism NI, Food NI, other partners coming in. Our local council were key to this, working really across the government departments on business support, pivoting the business support to the crisis, the emergency response, getting businesses that needed extra help with financial planning, with human resource planning, anything that was required, and working hand in glove with the agencies to channel that support through. And I've said the digital strategy really came into its own here, and we'll show you some examples of how we worked through that. So our website really started to drive the business online. Producers needed to change overnight from supplying our local hospitality industry to supplying direct. So we had to respond to that and put in the digital facility to buy and book online, and the website was a driver for that. Social media, as the next slide will show, was key. We really used our social media across all platforms to drive consumers to things like the online store, which became more and more important to us. This is Works Deli, a retail outlet and a cafe who really pivoted to supply home delivery and an online store. Next slide, please, Michelle. What we also did to drive some goods, we'll just go back to the one before. What we also did to drive business here was look at interactive competitions, online competitions across our social media channels. And this was really useful to drive engagement, drive loyalty to the brand and to the local producers. It was interesting to see the response. It was interesting to see our social media grow. Our local audience really sort of got behind supporting our local industry. And we went for very much a social media policy based around the quality and this idea of a community. And you've heard lots of that today around collaboration. The consumer market that we were aiming at wasn't about necessarily looking for numbers. We didn't engage necessarily in lots of paid advertising. We were looking for solid local community networking, and that's what we did and through our competitions. So we offered opportunities, and the businesses collaborated to create online vouchers to spend in the online shop. This one was interesting, the Dine Around Bushmills experience. It's an established, very popular food and drink experience, linking the Bushmills distillery to local restaurants and Bushmills, obviously stopped overnight. What we did was we offered tickets, obviously to spend in the future, but it was one of our most successful online competitions and allowed businesses to keep that first and foremost on the line. The interaction was great, and that kept that alive in the visitors' eyes. So again, you can see from some of the examples I'm showing, this was all about people. It was all about the community. It was all about keeping that story out there of the experience. This is Charlie from Brockgammon Farm. Many of you will know him, and he's our local goat farmer. He had to pivot overnight to home delivery of box schemes. It was not necessarily something that he had been used to doing, but he embraced it, and he really started to send all over Ireland. And indeed the UK, his chicken box scheme, his local box scheme, he kept developing more and more important ones. He'd obviously had to close his cafe, his Economuse visitor experience. So this really was important to keep that business alive. We were able to weigh in and help the businesses come together, produce hampers, gifts, ideas, and really work together with some collaterals, some branded merchandise, and push that out. This is an example from Works Deli in Portstewart, where we give them the bags, the spoons, and it really added to the visitor offer. Thanks, Michelle. What we found actually here in when we were going through the process was the importance of videography. Videos were another way and another tool of engaging with our customers out there. You've heard a lot today about the idea of localism, the idea of cooking and driving people to buy local, and the want to go back and cook from scratch. We harnessed the support of Paula McIntyre, who's been a long time supporter, and we got some videos going. Not particularly easy in a total lockdown period. I think this was over April, right when we were in the thick of lockdown. And Paula was able to get her iPad, get her recipes going, and we were able to produce some little short demonstrations of local dishes. But most importantly, these were channeling the availability of local products and always flagging up the online shop and where you could actually buy them. So that was great. I remember actually one particular dark Friday when Paula did her now infamous espresso martini, which was using Causeway Coffee and Bushmills Distillery, her own version. Our platforms went mental as people rushed on Friday night to have their espresso martini, and that was great. Another thing that actually was probably one of the most encouraging, we were all very proud of this, our local chefs. They're in the middle of lockdown, facing unsurmountable challenges ahead, really came together as a collective to support our local NHS. They called themselves the Causeway Chefs, and over a 2-week period, they put together recipes online. They videoed each other, really worked hard with Causeway Coast Community, a local online station, to drive the message out, raising over the course of the 2 weeks, thousands of pounds to support a local charity called Causeway Scrubs. And this was something, again, helped locally to build that momentum and that collective working over the period. So this is something that we were particularly proud of. When we moved to Reboot back in late May, early June, there really was, again, that collective working to understand, to navigate the return to work guidelines, to get everybody, where possible, reopening, understanding the social distancing, what it meant to them. This time we were pivoting the local hospitality businesses to maybe a home delivery option or takeaway. The new business models that we were putting in action really came into their own, that flexible working, how do we adapt to the new situation? And we also looked at our own training and accreditation. The home delivery from the restaurants, as has been alluded to already this morning, has been a lifeline for many restaurants, allowing them to cope and to deliver and actually satisfy that consumer demand. We had up in this area just some examples of many. Tartine Gourmet really delivered an excellent home delivery service across a Saturday night and a Sunday lunch, which was very popular, booked out every week, again keeping the business in the minds of the consumer and delivering on that demand. And this is something, again, that we have seen as we move forward to recovery, that the business models are now running in tandem. Tartine are offering their eat up in their normal social distancing activity alongside the takeaway option. And Ocho Tapas offering the tapas across the weekend. Really, really innovative in terms of Dress Up Friday, putting that imagination and that ambience and that experience back into the cooking right across the causeway. We also had Kraken Fish and Chips, our local fish and chip delivery van, a little retro delivery van, actually turning around and coming to the customers. So you could ring in, and instead of going and picking up your monkfish, your fish tacos, all your lovely fish-related dishes, they would deliver it to your door, and that again went down particularly well. This is another example, Locata Brewery. Locata Brewery, back at the beginning of lockdown, really faced a terribly dire situation. Their total supply chain had been wiped out overnight with the closure of the hospitality industry. They pivoted. They pivoted very quickly, and they ran a very, very successful home delivery operation in collaboration with a local off license. So instead of lying down and accepting inevitable, they turned it around, and this was something that was very welcome. You can see the smiles on all those faces on the doorstep with the deliveries. An excellent idea of businesses being imaginative and not accepting the situation as it was dealt to them, making the most of it. The other picture is Jerry. Jerry is our chocolate queen, Chocolate Manor. Jerry had great plans in place, working very carefully over the last few years to deliver her dream, which was a chocolate experience. She'd recently secured properties in Castlerock to deliver this dream, and was about to open when COVID actually struck. So what did she do? Again, she sat down, she thought about her opportunities, and she delivered what she called her artisan emporium. So she was able to sell her chocolates, but also take the other producers in and sell for them in Castlerock. And this worked really, really well over the summer period up on the north coast. So we've heard a lot about safety. We saw the consumer sentiments as they'd been emergent of the importance of health and safety and visitor considerations. What we did right back at the beginning of the sort of recovery reboot period was put in a level of training and accreditation for our businesses. It really now is seen as a supplement and an addition to the We're Good to Go, the wider destination marketing piece. But it allowed our businesses to work with the local college, Northwest Regional College, to work with health and safety officers on that hugely important subject of operating in a COVID environment, and then actually filling in and completing the important risk assessment. So we're really looking to on a local basis to dual track this particular safety message, given the consumer importance of that. We've put B&Bs through the accreditation, we've put restaurants, we've put food tours, we put a variety of businesses through to deliver this safe and alert message across the causeway. And as I've said, it really, really acts as a very good key message with the We're Good to Go industry standard as well. It's been wonderful to see some of the food tours coming back, their experiences that are being developed. We get our boat tours back on the water in a social distancing manner. We've also had some of our traditional tours, maybe not so much food orientated, looking to local food and drink as an important element to their offer. Dalriada Kingdom tours, led by Mark Rogers, saw the opportunity around food and drink offer, and he's offering his particular element of the market, a lovely ambient hamper as part of the offer going forward, which is lovely to get them to come experience the environment and the culture of the area, but also to take away with them a little piece of the local food and drink scene. So when we move to regroup, where the period that we're in now, this has been a really difficult part, but also what we see is opportunities. We've had to review our business plan and our priorities, and that's something that we really unpick where we were before and decide on the way forward for the next year and a half, being midway through a business plan. We needed to look again at our digital strategy and how we would take this forward in the new normal. We'd already underlined the importance of the digital strategy and how we could really get the businesses underpinned with a strong support. It wasn't now just about creating a website and delivering a website, it was putting in that extra level of back-end support on how they could limit their time that they spent at this online distribution element, because they are producers, they're chefs, they're not online experts, and there is plans ahead now to develop the digital strategy going forward and really shore up that important element of the business model. As I've said, our food and drink experiences can continue to evolve very quickly. What we have been surprised at over the period is the amount of new businesses that are still coming forward. A big part of what we do in Taste Causeway is launch new businesses and support them to come to market. We've had a number of these. We're seeing some really lovely things coming through. We've had Chestnuts Farm, the first milk vending machine in Northern Ireland, which has been so successful with families and visitors to the North Coast. They've been inundated and are selling out regularly from their farm. Lots of lovely collaborations going on with Chestnuts Farm, with their milk, Causeway Coffee doing a free tasting session, Jerry from Chocolate Manor offering the kids little chocolate dips for their milk. So lots of collaboration. We've had Missenden Sea Salt, a new company who are farming sea salt from our local coast up here, looking to deliver cooking and very nice cocktail alternatives, working with industry, working with chefs, and also working with hospitality on offers. Native Seafood in Scram, a local chef, has been really driven forward and seen the opportunities from COVID, and he's offered an online fresh fish ordering service. So fish obviously be one of our key elements up on the coast, and he's come through to offer that directly to the customer online. And he's taken that forward now to recently, in the last few weeks, he's offered a cafe and will continue in the autumn on a supper club experience. There's been numerous other examples. Butterfly and Bear, new guy with hoping to open a restaurant, has gone totally for online delivery. Kraken, our fish and chip delivery van, has now opened a permanent presence in a fish bar in Portrush. So we've seen lots and lots of opportunities and new experiences coming to market. So what are the key lessons learnt when we go through? We have looked at the resilience of the food and drink sector. We have shown we have it in abundance, and this is something I think Michelle has alluded to as well, our ability to pivot, our ability to take on board the opportunities and the challenge. We've demonstrated the flexibility and the sustainability of the industry and how we need to have these sustainable business models going forward. It's going to be vitally important that we look at the supply chain, we look at the markets, and we help those businesses support and deal with the obstacles ahead. No doubt we have shown the benefits of collaboration and the benefits of working together. And this again is what Taste Causeway is all about. When we look at the events, and we'll just go back, Michelle, and I'll finish on the slow food. Again, events were very much part of what we did in Causeway, and we feel as if we've been a bit hamstrung in this, that we can't deliver and really showcase. But in the autumn, we are planning to launch our Slow Food Causeway. Over lockdown, we went through an accreditation process to be accredited as a destination. And we are working now with the suppliers, with the hospitality and with the trade to really bring this forward in a socially distanced way, using our virtual tools where applicable, working with our industry to showcase slow food development as we go forward. So we think the opportunities are there, and we look forward to engaging in this discussion going forward. food and drink, as the sentiments have shown and every other speaker before me has alluded to, it's here to stay, local food and drink especially, and we look forward to getting involved in the conversation as to how to develop it further. Thank you.